she worked for John.
He would be very, very unhappy, but
He would understand.
I guess he would
Oh,
understand.
sure he would.
He would be unhappy about the fate of the Lady Rose. Like if this young guy that
Just
now,
the fact that it's getting older and
yeah, well, he would have known that would happen
Yes, I
anyway.
Bound to.
Bound to.
But if
Bound
you
to.
if you sell it to somebody who's not going to use it to transport people, it could still have a useful life for who knows how long.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
But like you say, it's 72 years old, basically now.
Yeah.
So it's going to need a lot of work.
A lot of work, yeah.
You know, like physical. I'm assuming it's going to have to. But that's not just to the safety issue with people.
No.
It's just to keep it afloat.
Keep it afloat, yeah.
If you don't do the safe issue with people, then you probably don't have to spend a lot of that money to bring the stuff if you're only going to carry cargo.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because when you're dealing with people, you have to have
Oh, yeah, right.
you have to have it up to their standards.
Right,
And that's
right.
a hefty. But whether this new owner knew this before he bought it, he says he just discovered it was going to have to do this, so it doesn't make it viable because you can only carry 100 people. The Francis Barkley can carry 200. Although it's about 50 years old, it's still getting on. And is there a need for that service anymore other than tourism? Because you don't have the small logging camps that you used to once have, the canneries and all that. You don't have any of that anymore.
No, that has gradually disappeared.
Yeah.
And that's changing times.
Yeah.
So you feel that Dick would have he would have accepted
Oh,
this?
heavens, yes.
Yeah, he would have.
Oh, yes, he would.
Yeah. As Mom said, he would have been awfully sorry to see the end of Lady Rose, but he could see the point, you know, that things.
Did they ever talk about him and John? What they expected? Did they have a life expectancy for the Lady Rose? That never got
Never
to that.
mentioned it that I know.
No. I
I
never.
mean, they knew obviously it would go on forever, but
Oh no, right? No.
but when they retired, when they sold the business and retired, that was sort of the end of it for them.
It was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. Dick was building himself a little sailboat, which he wanted to spend time in, but he never got it finished.
No, he got 2/3 of it built.
Whatever happened to that?
We donated it to the Wooden Boat Museum in Cowichan Bay,
Okay.
Yeah.
and they were quite happy to have it.
When did you donate that?
After Dick died,
No,
No,
after
it
Dick
was
died.
before he died.
No, it
yes, it was
it
before
about
he died.
2 years before he passed
was.
away.
Was he in good health to the end?
He had a mild for 5 years
Yes.
before he passed away.
Okay.
And the last couple of years, the poor Ni Kwan, now he called her out here. She was in a plastic boat he built to work on her. He more or less, the last couple of years, hadn't he, Mom, before he passed away, more or less forgot about it.
Yeah, he
Forgot. anything
Was this a
about it.
result of the stroke?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Possibly, and there was a heart involvement too. Although he was in good health otherwise.
Yeah,
but
it was, that's the 2/3 of it that he had built her. Yeah,
That was a big one.
yeah, 25 feet sloop. He called her the Ni Kwan.
Ni Kwan?
Ni Kwan, which is some
Spirit of the
Spirit,
storm.
yeah, Spirit of the Storm.
Oh, it's on the back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Spirit
Oh.
of the Storm.
It's when you're taping things, you have to read how the spelling's going to be.
Sorry.
Neekwun, Spirit of the Storm. This picture was taken August 5th, 2001. Well, that's 8 on the back here, right?
August 5th, 2000, yeah, 2000.
And Dick passed away in 2005, you said? 2003.
Christmas Eve, 2000.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
So you
Actually got a copy.
don't look forward to Christmas Eves from now on.
No. I've actually got a copy of it. Notice there, whatever, and that's actually a copy of one of the tributes that were written about him after he passed
Oh,
away.
Meg Schofield.
Yeah. And another tribute. Val Hughes did a tribute.
Yes. I know Val very well.
She did a tribute there.
Okay,
Keith-
yeah,
Keith
we had
Dawson
that
did
in the Pennyworth, this one, yeah,
Right? Yeah.
yeah.
Dick used to write poetry.
Yes,
Now, that's something I bet
Yeah.
you a lot of
Yeah.
people didn't know, eh?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
he used to write
He-
poetry.
he
Oh, we
was-
got books of his poetry.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you find that a surprise that a man of the sea would write poetry, or is that?
No,
no.
This was
He-
strictly,
He wrote most of it on the ship too.
well, he had the time, I guess,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is this article that Val wrote, is it factual? Dick was born in Lee Smith in 1914.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, in 1919 they returned to Canada.
There's one mistake.
There's one,
That
yeah.
was
What was it?
His, something about Ireland.
Yeah, his family went back to Ireland. They
Yeah, his family returned to Ireland
No,
for a
they-
time
no,
where his
no,
father
they went-
served in the trenches in World War I.
No,
Yes,
they went to England.
yeah, the father.
Okay, but he did serve in
Yes.
World War I,
Yeah,
but it was
yeah.
England they went to, not
Yeah,
Ireland.
not
Oh,
Ireland.
yes, that was
No,
the father,
not
yeah.
Ireland, It's just like this article in the.
It says in here that he contributed to the Historical Society
Yeah,
over the years.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was close to his heart.
yeah. Oh,
The saving the history,
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, he was very interested in that.
and they got a collect. It says she put in here that have a good collection of his papers and publications in the archives.
Yeah, he did a few articles over the years. There's one here that he did for the Vancouver Sun.
Well, he was 90 years in his 90th
In
year.
his 90th year,
When's his birthday?
October 24th.
Oh, okay. So he had just had his 90th birthday.
That's right. No, it's 89.
89,
Oh, okay.
more or less.
Well,
Going into his 90th
yeah,
year.
that's right. I mean, let's not be picky.
But this, this was written, I think, in quite early on here. But it's a copy of one article my dad wrote in the Vancouver Sun.
Oh, yeah.
But I can always get you a photocopy of that one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's not necessary right now.
No,
But I think what I would do is I would use. So she just
So that's-
assumed it was they went back to Ireland
Yeah.
then.
They didn't. They went to
Yeah.
England.
Okay. There we go.
They had been, they actually came out, what? His mother was a South African.
Third
And her
generation.
father
Oh, really?
had gone out, had joined the Boer War, run away from school this last year to join up to go out to the Boer War in 1900. And stayed, he fancied the South Africa, the country. And he stayed after the war and joined the Cape Mounted Police.
Mm.
And he was stationed, a group of them, in different farms, and one was the mother-in-law's, or mother-to-be, family's father's farm. And that's how they met. And then they married after that. Don't know the Anyway, came out to Canada. There was a lot of land in northern Alberta being given away, and I don't know what to try. I mean, why on earth they would want to go to Edmonton, I don't know. I think they know why
They
they're
didn't
not
realize.
there.
Yeah.
But there was this land business,
Yeah.
I believe. I don't know anything
Free land
about
or
that.
whatever. Yeah.
And they only stayed there about a year. And then they came out to Vancouver Island, to Ladysmith.
What? How did they end up from Edmonton to Ladysmith? That's quite a
I don't know.
unusual
I don't know.
situation. I
They
mean,
must have heard
certainly
about
would
it.
have been a lot nicer.
Yes, yes. I don't know.
Maybe it was they had enough of the lousy winters in northern Alberta.
I remember Dick's father saying the water in Edmonton at the time they were there would kill horses and babies.
Yeah. Oh, well, I can
That's all I
believe
know
that.
about Edmonton.
That's enough.
But then they came out to
Yeah.
Ladysmith. Dick was born there, just about the time the First World War was starting. So off the father went again,
Yeah.
joined up.
What were Dick's thoughts after he retired from the Alberni Marine Transportation? Then he quit actually skippering the Lady Rose a couple of years after that. Did him and John stay in touch at all, or did John live here still? John
yes.
stayed here?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Actually, there's a little house that my mother had built when my father died, down here on our piece of land. And the Monter Faison, they built in Banfield,
Oh, okay.
built a house there.
Okay, that's,
But
yeah.
then he had to come up for medical treatment.
Oh, okay.
So they often stayed in our
Okay,
little cottage.
okay,
And until he died, yeah.
okay. So they were close then,
Yes,
John and Dick?
yes.
That's good.
And, oh yes, and they got on very well.
And John's wife?
Kay, she died a few years ago of cancer.
Oh, okay. And they've got a daughter, right?
Yes, Carrie, they'd five children.
And you said Carrie is running the place down
She
the...
was, I don't know whether she
Yeah.
still is or not. I know that she and her husband wanted to retire. Shan met Mrs. George
Okay,
in town,
yeah.
and Mrs. George told Shan that Carrie wanted to retire. But whether they have or not, what's his name on the dock would know.
Roland?
Roland would
Yeah,
know.
okay, I'll talk to, I know Roland's mother, I know her quite well.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, he keeps up with all the
Yeah,
family.
he's starting to write letters to the editor now, and he's getting pretty political. Yeah. So you've obviously enjoyed Port Alberni.
Yes, yes, I have.
Lots of good memories here.
Yes, a lot.
That's good.
My parents came up here. My father joined up the Second World War. Well, he'd been all through the First World War. He'd been at Vimy Ridge
For
and at
God's sake.
Passchendaele.
Wow.
And then they came out to Canada in 1920. And went through all the Depression and years, which were tough. But he worked for the Imperial Oil.
Well, you went through that too as a child, eh?
Yes, yes. I remember my mother and grandmother making pots of soup and bringing it into town for the unemployed. The young fellows had
Yeah.
there was no relief for them. Not at all.
Nothing like there is
No.
today. Yeah.
No.
Some people are starting to compare this economic downturn because it is a global one now.
Yes, it is.
But it could never be. Things could never be the way they were in the 30s because they didn't have any of the social nets that they have today. Not that things can't get bad, but they can never be the same.
You wouldn't think so. I would
No.
certainly hope not.
No, although I know, like, my mother grew up during the Depression, and they had a farm near Calgary.
Yes, well, I
And-
grew up in Calgary.
Yeah, well, they lived near Drumhill or Three Hills
Oh, yes.
in that area, and my mom was always, we called her a hoarder because she kept everything until it absolutely was no longer useful in
Yes.
any way, because that they had gone through that, even though
You did.
she wasn't
Yes.
directly affected as much as
But she'd learned it.
she learned,
Yes.
because that's the way things were.
Of course it
But
had to
my grandfather was... Dick and John remained friends until... Well, how did Dick take John's death?
be. Oh, well, just accepted it.
Except
He went to gave she had
a memorial service held
memorial
down at the
service down
restaurant
on
on the waterfront.
Dick and Shan went to it. I couldn't because I have a broken leg.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, well, if I go standing around, I'll collapse somewhere. So
Okay.
I didn't go, but Dick and Shan did.
Mind you, I said, how did they take it? When John, he had to be in extended care at the old hospital for a few years,
Okay.
and it got Dick quite a bit to go and see him there. He did once, but
Right.
that got him a bit, unfortunately. Knowing the person so long, and then.
He knew that John was pretty bad off.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
John-
Oh,
John
he
knew
had the
himself.
Parkinson's
Yeah, John knew.
over
Okay.
25
Oh, yeah.
years, and
Must have been
unfortunately,
hard
it was
on
just.
John's wife then.
Yes,
It was, yeah. Illness just
yes. I
took hold
remember.
of him more and more.
I remember when he was apparently diagnosed with it. He came up here he and Kay came up, I guess, to tell Dick, because at that time they were in partnership with the ship. And I remember John coming up and saying he'd been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Which they didn't know. They learn more and more about Parkinson's
Oh, yeah.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a sad disease. It's like Alzheimer's, you know. You know there's
Yeah.
nothing you can really do about it.
No.
Oh, no, no, they always say they have hope, don't they?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, you gotta live on it, you know, you live on hope.
They,
Well,
yeah,
sure.
this is it. They may be able to do more for it now. I don't know.
I think they can, at least they know how to treat it a little better. They don't know how to
I
cure
think
it.
that's what it is,
Yeah.
not to cure it,
Yeah.
but to treat it.
Well, you start there, work on, I guess.
That's it.
So Dick lived a good life, a full life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. He did have the mild stroke 5 years before he passed away, but other than that, he was physical.
Yeah.
He walked on, he took himself for walks on the dike for a good few years after he retired,
Yeah.
and he was walking on the dike up to 3 weeks before he passed away.
Okay. Yeah.
So he just went downhill the last 3 weeks
Yeah.
fast, and as the doctor said, it was just unfortunately the system was
Shut it down.
letting go,
Yeah.
shutting down.
Yeah. 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 He saw a lot in his life that maybe we will never see. Hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you think he would have said, okay, well, if that's what's going to happen to the Lady Rose, then that's
Oh,
so
I'm
be
sure,
it.
I'm sure he
Yeah.
was never for a long drawn out.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Not about
you know,
things.
you wouldn't.
No.
I'm sure he'd say, well, what would you do with an old ship?
Yeah. What would John have thought? Do you have any feelings on that?
What would John have thought?
I think pretty much the
Probably
same.
the same thing.
I think
very
they were
similar.
practical
Practical
in
about
that,
things.
you know, in that way.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they were,
Yeah.
Good.
both
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a, no matter what happens to it, if they're going to have a meeting, a public meeting, at some point in time now to find out if there's any will
Well,
in
in
the
this day and
community.
age where money is tight, I don't see how the city could spend a lot of money on keeping up an old road that's not going to do anyone any good.
We can't.
No.
That's, do you save part of it and have a display at the museum, like the wheelhouse or,
Yeah,
Right,
you know,
yes,
or-
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Pictures
could
of the
see
ship.
that, yeah. If you
Pictures of the ship.
pictures
People
of
go
the
for
ship.
that.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, nowadays, that's what you
Yeah.
have to do. If you can't save the whole thing, you
No.
save some of it.
Yeah, pictures of the ship, or as you say, the wheelhouse,
Yeah.
or the wheel, from the wheelhouse, or, you
A
know.
lot of people are thinking maybe if we had a static display, if it was on display somewhere along Johnson Road, you know, tourists going by can see, yeah, then that would be an attraction for sure.
Right,
But that's gonna cost $500,000 or more to put it set up, and then
Put it
somebody has
set
to
up.
look after it, and of
Right,
course, you know, there's
Yeah.
bound to be vandalism.
bound
so,
to be vandalism,
Yes.
right,
You
yeah,
have to, you know, it has to be insured and
yeah.
keep it up
right.
and everything else, but we'll find out when they call this public meeting to see if there's a
Everyone.
will out there to save
Yeah,
it or
right.
save it somehow. Or,
Same, right,
but I think everybody would rather not to see it sold off and cut up for scrap
no.
without
right.
saving part of it or
Without
somehow.
saving, yeah,
Yeah.
right. But as Mom says, some pictures of it, and
Yeah.
maybe the,
Did you guys save anything from it? From the business, like
from the business?
like in the way of photos? Did they ever take a lot of pictures?
Oh, well, we
Uh,
haven't,
That is a print of a painting above the fireplace.
Yeah. Okay.
from Ford magazine.
Yes, a reporter. People were always traveling and writing up, you know.
Yeah.
And Dick doesn't remember her in particular, but apparently she wrote an article on the trip and took a lot of snapshots.
When was that trip taken? Do you know? Anybody know the year
What's that?
that this?
Painting done.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
We've got the article somewhere. I wonder where.
Yeah, where?
We'll try and look it
We're
up.
trying.
This was a writer that took the trip down on the Lady Rose.
Yeah.
Yes.
The work.
And then, as we heard, then it disappeared as far as we were concerned.
The article,
No, well, with
the painting.
the whole business.
Oh,
We didn't
okay.
think anything more about it.
No.
Okay.
But the Ford Motor Company wrote back to us from eastern states
Yeah.
say they had bought an article by a writer who had made a trip on the Lady Rose and taken a lot of pictures, and they had their resident artist paint a picture from one of the snapshots. And would we like a copy of it?
Would we like a copy of this?
I would say yes.
Yeah,
So we
well,
said,
that's
we
it.
said yes.
That's
And
it.
there it came.
When would you have gotten that?
Quite a while ago.
Yeah.
I wish we
Dick
had-
was still alive when you got it?
Oh, yeah.
yes,
okay.
oh, gosh,
So he,
yeah.
what did he think of that?
Oh, he
yeah.
loved it. And John always said it was the best
John said
picture.
that's the best picture
Lady Rose
ever taken.
anywhere.
Is that
As far as
right?
he's
Yeah.
concerned.
Well, that's really, see how connected things are?
But why on
And these are
earth
just
did you
news-
even think of selling it to the Ford Motor Company?
Well, maybe they commissioned for maybe, I don't know.
Newspaper clippings, and I have an article from beautiful British Columbia with pictures of her. And then there's the odd snapshot of her.
I know the one thing that Brooke did, the Knowledge Network did
Oh, yeah.
they did a nice video.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they made that, and
Yes.
he said he paid it. It cost him a little bit extra for them to do the helicopter, and when they were taking pictures of the whole inlet, he had got paid a little bit of money and got him to do a nice video of the Lady Rose, and that was really well done. I've seen it a few times. They were
So
done.
high.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, this was beautiful British Columbia magazine that did this article. But there's just, just different photographs all through there of the Lady Rose.
So she's got to be the most famous lady at Port Alberni, I guess, eh?
Possibly for her time.
Yeah.
But then some other person will come along and
Oh,
take
yeah.
the place.
That's it. Yeah. Except for the very last page, it's got nothing to do with the Lady Rose. It's an article that my dad wrote about our pet crow we had for over 30 years.
That came out from behind the garage.
Oh, yeah.
Injured way.
We had Joe the Crow living with us for 30 years.
That's a lot of caw.
I would bring them in at night, put them into a
Oh, you never had them so good.
crate with a perch, and then we put them out in the daytime
Yeah.
in his day house.
Well, he came up to Dick one evening. Dick used to walk down to the gate. We had a little dog at the time.
Yeah.
He used to walk down to the gate just before it got dark.
Yeah.
And when he came back, Tootsie ran behind the garage,
Mm-hmm.
and as Dick said, came out with a crow in front of her.
Mm.
She wasn't touching the crow, and the crow ran up to Dick. And Dick saw that it wasn't able to fly, it was dragging a wing.
Oh, okay.
So he picked
That was
it up.
Van Lee.
Yeah.
Right.
Who's Pat Grace?
Mom's
Well, that's
name.
my name.
Oh, that's
Pat-
what you
Pat-
wrote under
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Oh, for
yeah,
God's
yeah,
sake.
He wrote under.
Yeah.
Well, he wrote under your name.
That's
Yes.
right. When he was in the Navy,
Oh.
he wrote several articles, and they weren't allowed to write under their own name
Oh,
in the
okay.
Navy.
In the Navy.
So
So
he
he was Pat Grace.
started the
Isn't
Pat
that
Grace
cute?
business.
Mom's
Anyway,
first and second.
I had to ask because I thought about it.
Mom's
Yeah.
first and second name.
Anyway, Dick picked up the crow and brought her out to Dr. Hugo Lambrecht's.
Okay, I meant, yeah.
And
That was before Hugo had his clinic.
Yeah.
He had his clinic out of the house.
Yeah.
anyway, he said he's been shot under the wing.
Yeah.
And he said those fine bones, he said, I'm afraid I couldn't do anything.
Couldn't do it.
He said,
No.
you just have to keep them.
Yeah.
So we did. We did.
So Dick built a corral around the maple tree at the back.
Outside.
We had a big cage in the basement.
There was a perch in it.
Bring him in the basement because we have a lot of coons around here.
Yeah.
Yes. He'd be a
Oh,
sitting
you'd
duck.
be gone, yeah.
Sitting crow.
City Crow, yeah.
But he lived with us for 30 years.
Yeah, he did.
He died a month before Dick.
Yes.
Now, see how connected
Yeah,
things are?
a month
Just a month.
before my dad passed away. Yeah.
How did he take that?
He
Dick.
didn't know.
My dad
Oh.
didn't really had sort of forgotten about
At that
Joe.
time, he was
I'll
a
try
bit...
one of these.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're
sure.
excellent.
Oh,
Thank you very
have
much.
a Christmas cake too, while you're at it.
I'll have another one later.
Oh, okay.
My wife finds out I had it, she'll tell me.
Oh,
Don't tell her.
okay. Can I get more coffee?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, you
Yeah,
haven't?
I will.
Yeah, okay.
No, Dick in his last few years,
I guess
His memory was
his memory
pretty
was
well
fading.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he knew who everybody
Oh,
was.
yes, he did. It wasn't that bad.
No, no,
Yes,
yeah.
the doctor said he didn't have Alzheimer's.
No, but
It was what they came to the conclusion, and it could be true. As a young fellow, he'd done a bit of boxing. His father started it. He trained him.
amateur boxing.
Amateur boxing.
That was quite common.
And they didn't use helmets.
No
And,
protection.
no, and I remember one time in Victoria, before the war, we weren't married at the
No,
time.
before you married.
He came up to us. We lived in Victoria, my family, and said I had a boxing bout arranged for Friday night or something like that.
scratching.
And my mother said, "Well, is your father coming into town?" And he said, "I don't think so. He was out at William Head." So when the time came, my mother said, "Well, we'll have to go down because he'd be on his own." My brother was just a teenager, and I wasn't much more. And my mother, the three of us.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Dick was. They put him up against the Army
Provincial champion
boxer. Why, I don't know.
I don't
that
know.
Was the,
Had no chance.
you know, and
This
he
man,
was
yeah.
just,
Yeah.
you know, and his head was battered, and he was out several times.
Yeah.
And then they all disappeared, and it was over.
Yeah.
My mother said, "Well, where is there a doctor here?" No one knew. So she said to my brother, "Well, go back and see if you can find Dick and see
Yeah.
what's happening."
See what's
Everyone
going on.
was gone, but Dick was there on the floor.
On the floor, left on the floor, yeah.
And we took him home in a taxi. None of us had a car at
Yeah.
that time. Everyone walked.
Yeah.
And took him home. And it was a couple of days before he really came to.
Yeah.
As
Pretty
you said,
scary.
he didn't know anybody, he
And,
didn't know what was what for a couple of days.
Dr. Burnett said, this can
Injure the
do it. And they didn't wear a helmet in
No,
those days. you
no,
see.
he was
And he
lucky
said
now.
a concussion, a severe concussion, and
Maybe
Nothing could be
maybe
done.
as he got older, you know, who knows,
You don't know.
the injury may have been there to a degree over the
Yeah.
years, and then
Yeah.
as he got at the last, it may have.
Well, it's just like Jamie Amos's mom passed away of an aneurysm. She was 70 years old,
Oh dear.
but she was really quick. Like those are quick, but it's just devastated. And the father is not in very good shape. Went back east, had 2 or 3 heart attacks while he was there, and they had to wait for a year or two before he could come home.
Oh dear.
And then this just happened the other week there, so an aneurysm is funny because it can hit you at any time.
At any
You don't
time.
even know you've had it for
No,
years.
no,
Yeah.
right.
So-
Mrs. Thomas had an aneurysm.
Hmm?
Mrs. Thomas, Frances Paxton, many years ago, had an aneurysm in
Oh,
the
she did?
in the brain. Yeah,
And another lady we know had
but she
died
got
at the
through it.
Bulldogs game with an aneurysm. Just
Oh, no.
all of a sudden got sick. A young lady,
Oh, jeez.
a realtor, Chris Colclott's wife. It was about a year ago.
Hmm.
And just right there, it just happened. And it's gone like really fast. There's nothing you can do, you know.
She didn't make it, or she did. Oh, she didn't.
She never. They got her to the hospital, but
She never recovered.
she never regained consciousness
No.
and never survived.
No.
But it's just one of those things. It's
Yeah.
terrible, but
I know.
what are you
right.
gonna do?
This
you
is
know?
it. Yeah. But now, as Mom says, they use a lot more helmets and whatnot.
Oh, they do. They do.
Why the heck?
During the war, where were you then? Were you here on the island or
No,
Victoria?
I went up to Prince Rupert. He was in RCNR,
Okay.
much to his disgust, because he wanted to be fighting, you know, in the
Overseas?
Atlantic. But the RCNR,
Okay, one of our kitties yodeling. It's probably Purdy. Hey, what are you
the
jabbering about?
RCNR were experienced seamen,
Okay.
tugboat men, fishermen. And they didn't have to be trained, so the Navy kept them here, much to Dick's
To
disgust.
train others, or
Hmm?
to train others? They used them.
To run the ships here.
Okay.
Because to train too.
He knew the coastline very well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And they had all sorts of ships running about. Anyway, Dick was disgusted that he couldn't get several of his friends that got corvettes and were away, but a good many of them were killed.
Yeah.
But anyway, he stayed. Well, he had to stay. They wouldn't. I mean,
Choice.
usually wouldn't say, "Well, you can stay if you can go where you like." They didn't do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were married in Victoria in '42, and they sent him to Prince Rupert.
Okay.
So I went up there too, and we were there for a couple of years at that time. Living was difficult because there wasn't much
No doubt. Yeah.
accommodation.
Yeah.
Then they sent him down to where? Oh, to Vancouver to get his master's ticket, and he had to run a ship around the harbor,
Okay.
a watch ship, and he got his ticket there, and then
But when was he stationed up at York Island?
that was before Vancouver.
That was before
Yeah.
Vancouver, was
From
it?
was
Prince
stationed
Rupert to
at
York Island?
York Island.
Yeah, York Island.
Yeah. There was a ship there that they didn't have a pop gun aboard the ship, but they stopped all the ships coming in.
And supposedly
Well, there was a gun on York Island,
Okay.
you see, and the gun apparently would stop anyone coming in.
Right.
There were several submarines around, Japanese submarines. Had been. So anyway, they were careful about this. And then New York Island, then Vancouver, and then they sent him back to Prince Rupert with a wooden minesweeper. Before that, the minesweepers had been metal, but the Japanese came out with magnetic mines.
Okay.
So a metal ship
Well, that made sense. Yeah.
wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So they built, and the Americans built wooden minesweepers too. So Dick was halfway across the Pacific when the bomb was dropped.
Yeah, because he was his ship was shipping out for
Yes.
Japan, had not
Yeah.
atomic
Well, the
bomb.
minesweepers had to
struck.
go before the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Other
So
ships.
thank God the
Yeah.
atomic bomb happened, because he may never have come back.
Well, that's to say, people have mixed emotions about that. Today, when young people say we should ban the bomb and do everything
Yes.
about it, the older people say, well, hang on a second here. we would have had to go,
Yeah.
and a lot of people would have died
Oh, God.
in an
They would have.
invasion
They
of
would
Japan.
have too.
Yeah,
Oh,
it would have.
Lord.
Yes.
What did he ever say about that incident?
Nothing much.
No.
He wasn't greatly impressed with Navy Light,
No.
No?
so he didn't really talk about it that much.
Didn't say anything about when they dropped the bombs on
No, not
Hiroshima and
particularly.
Nagasaki?
No.
Just glad he didn't have to go.
Right.
Right.
Raisy. Just jabbering to Nikki. Nikki's underneath the bedspread, and Raisy's
Oh.
jabbering at him. Sorry. Excuse the kitty talk in this house.
Thank you. Provide us with entertainment.
Mhm. That's good. So that was an interesting chapter in your life, no
It
doubt,
was,
eh?
It was, yes, it
Yeah.
was. Right.
When that happened, the atomic bomb was dropped or whatever, and my dad's naval ship came back down to Victoria from Prince Rupert, Mom had already headed down to Victoria on the CPR ferry. When my dad's naval ship was down in Victoria ahead of the ferry, and he was standing on the dock waiting for her to arrive in on the ferry.
No, it even left.
No, Mom didn't know that he was going to be there at all.
Booted them out as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Well, they knew that all the men were coming from overseas, you see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that they had to make up their mind quickly where they were going and what they. And that was when Dick decided, well, I haven't anything but a sea ticket. Perhaps I should learn something else. And he was going for forestry.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he got the ulcer on his eye from his bad tonsils,
Yeah.
which he didn't know he had.
And that's so weird, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you think about
Evidently,
it.
it can happen, evidently, yeah.
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 But tell us a little bit about the Margaret Street Bridge.
Oh,
Because it would have been a lot easier just to go across the bridge in the
yes.
town.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
oh,
it
yeah,
would.
yeah.
And we didn't fancy they didn't ask us, mind you,
Yeah.
the dike walk.
Mm.
They chopped about,
Well, that was for the Dyke Walk, yeah,
Yeah.
not Margaret Street Bridge, though.
well, from the Margaret Street, when this other bridge
Oh, when the
went through.
Virgin Street
Yeah.
Bridge was built, right,
No, it was a nice walk, but it was a crooked bridge.
yeah.
Oh, okay,
It was curved.
It turned a corner, or was it straight across then?
Well, it was straight across in a way, and maybe it was
Wait,
the creek that,
No,
The way the road was.
No, the bridge did curve to a degree.
I
You
guess
know,
it did. Yeah.
The bridge was following the natural
Oh, okay.
lay of the land, if you know
Oh,
what I
okay, so it
if I
curved
drift,
to the, if you were coming from the other side,
it would be turning to a bit
towards
your
to the right,
right,
Yeah.
okay,
little bit.
to connect with Margaret Street on this side?
yes.
Okay,
Not
Yeah.
much,
no,
a
yeah,
little bit.
because if you drive to the other
Little bit.
side, it's almost straight across.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah, it is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right,
it is,
yeah.
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So they when they put that through, obviously it was like,
But they rearranged the creek
Yeah.
when they put the dike walk in.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
it's not, the creek isn't the shape
The
it
shape
was
it was
when
back.
the bridge was
That's
put
what was
over.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, right on. No, well, they had to dike it up and,
Yeah.
it was flooded all the time, you know, they had to do
Didn't flood
some.
up here.
No, it better not have flooded
No.
up here.
No, it didn't, no.
you know, we could, even though it never flooded the old house.
Okay,
Even the
No,
tidal
never.
wave,
And it's
we
on-
never even knew anything about it. The water didn't cut, the tidal wave, the water
yes.
didn't come past the bend in the bridge down
Okay.
at Penny Road.
Okay.
It didn't come beyond there.
yeah, well, it went the other way, so,
Oh, yeah,
Luckily, yeah.
out towards River Road,
Yeah.
that direction,
Yeah.
yes.
yeah.
But it didn't, coming up the creek, it stopped at the bend.
Yeah. So the Margaret Street Bridge, you remember it, obviously,
Oh, yes.
because that, you would have used it
Oh,
countless
yes,
times.
yes.
And that, the main traffic would have gone right past your door then, in those days, I guess, eh?
And
Yeah,
the
down-
old
down
place,
the
yes,
creamery.
Yeah, past the
Yeah,
creamery,
right.
all the way up to Compton and
That's
Yeah.
right.
out to Beaver Creek, because,
Well, yes, and one reason we built this house so far back
Mm.
was because we wanted to get away from the traffic.
Yeah, and no road
We thought
behind
that,
us.
you know.
yeah, understandable, yeah. And then they moved it, so the traffic goes that way.
Right. Not that near us, but
No.
mind you, the only thing that we don't like is the curve.
Yeah.
At first it was straight, you see,
Oh, okay,
and there was a stop sign,
okay,
but this curve is murderous.
yeah,
It really is.
no doubt. Yeah. Who lives next door to you then?
No one.
Oh, okay,
It was empty, vacant land.
oh, okay,
For good
The
many
house
years.
was only built there about 14 years ago.
oh, okay,
Oh,
yeah.
next door here.
yeah,
Chris
Right.
Trombley.
yeah,
On Bard,
Built it.
yeah.
yeah,
Tremblay.
And his job vanished with the Sproat Lake
yeah.
division, so they moved down to Chemainus,
Oh, okay,
Ladysmith.
Well, he built a new house at Ladysmith because he was having to commute to Chemainus for 2 years
yeah.
from here. Yes, you're trying to get cousin Nicky to play, and he won't play. He wants to sleep.
Like kids, eh?
Oh, yeah.
So the tidal wave, what was your impression of that?
Oh, well,
Was it a little
I
exciting?
remember it was a lovely night.
It was
moonlight,
clear, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Lovely night. It was in June, I think.
March,
March,
Was
was
it
it?
end of March,
Oh,
yeah.
well, it seemed to me it was a lovely
Easter
summer.
weekend.
Oh,
Easter
that's right.
weekend.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
right,
I
that's
didn't
right,
quite remember
that's
what
right.
time of
Well,
year.
Dick had gone to bed,
Yeah.
and I guess I was still huddling around somewhere.
And
And I answered, the phone rang, and I answered it.
Jock the watchman.
And it was a watchman on the dock.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he said, tell Dick there's been a tidal wave. You better come down here and see to the ship. So I woke Dick, he'd got to sleep. Oh, he said, what's
Jock.
Oh, he said, Jock's drunk again.
He's drunk again. He's always getting the bottle. But
Okay.
then my dad said,
Oh, maybe not.
oh, maybe not. Maybe I better go down.
So he did.
He did.
And he met the water at the pulp mill.
Yeah,
At Pulp Mill, and he had to go up on 10th Avenue, go down
Yeah.
Argyle Street, and park the car quite a ways up
Up the
Arg,
street,
and then
yeah.
get down. He saw the water, as he said, whooshing out. So he dashed straight down for Lady Rose and
slashed their lines and hopped on and got the
He got
engines
there
going.
just in between the
Just
waves.
in between the
That
waves,
the water was
got
going
the
back
engine
out, yeah.
on,
Yeah.
By
and
that
then
time,
by that time, water was whooshing back in, and he got her out, away from the dock, in the middle
by
of the
that
harbor.
time
Good
John
thing, eh?
had got
Yeah.
in and,
You in turn phoned John and the
Oh, did
office,
I?
because Dick asked
Oh.
you to phone both of them.
cause they both went down.
Yeah.
It would have been a
Harry.
mess, eh?
Oh, nothing but
I
logs.
don't think I've ever read anything about that, you know,
Oh.
about the, you know, I know I read that, obviously the ship wasn't damaged, so,
No, because.
No.
yeah, because he got, but I never heard that anybody's never told me about what you just said,
Yeah, and,
which is
and,
what's interesting.
right,
Yeah.
when he got down there first to the ship and the water whooshed out, here the poor Lady Rose was sitting on the rock bottom, right on the bottom of the harbor.
Yeah, well, because it sucked it. I knew.
It sucked it all
Yeah,
out.
it sucked it all out.
And then
yeah.
by the time my dad dashed to the wheelhouse and switched on the engines or whatever, and by that time the water was starting to whoosh back in, and he just steered her straight forward.
good timing on his part.
Right, get
Yeah.
her away from the dock.
They couldn't take the
Keep
ship
her
out
away
for a
from the
couple of days.
No,
The
there was
harbor
so
was
much
full of
debris.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah, real
yeah,
mess.
yeah.
Log booms all loose
Yeah.
and
Yes,
God,
yeah.
junk everywhere.
There'd been a small earthquake in this area, actually just before we came up here.
June of 1946.
Ah, there we are.
Yeah,
Essen and
23rd,
George.
I believe.
You're very good
George
with
were running the Utah.
dates.
I've gotten so deep into this,
Yeah.
it's really very interesting. Yes, we didn't get it. It was some chimneys collapsed, and Courtney got a lot harder
Yes.
than the people here did.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
And,
oh, definitely.
Some
A few chimneys knocked down here.
Yeah, and there was some. You could feel it. There was some depth, but over there on the East Coast, they felt it a lot more. There were some.
Evan, there was some sandbar in Comox or Courtney that was rearranged.
yeah.
It was moved.
Yeah, it was more dramatic there than it was here.
Yes,
yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Straight, isn't it?
Oh, it is and it isn't. You know, like I said, after you've done this, I've done this so many years now of talking to people.
Radio.
Okay, when Kennedy got shot in November of 1963, you had gone over to Qualicum.
Yes. My parents lived over there.
Okay. Yeah. And you heard it on the radio.
Yes.
What did you think? Were you thinking at the time?
Oh, well, I didn't hear it on the radio. Well, bafflement. You know, it just came as such a shock.
Remember Dick talking about that?
Well, he was out in the ship.
He was out on the ship, so he
Well,
may
you
not.
must have talked about it later.
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
yes.
later.
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shocker.
See, another life moment that's big for people after, well, the Cuban Missile Crisis was big before that happened, and that was a moment in world history a lot of people don't realize could have gotten really a lot worse. Then nobody would have thought the Berlin Wall would have come down the way it did without a shot being fired. Nobody would have predicted that. Man walked in the moon in 1969. Mind you, there are still some people who believe that was a hoax and it never really happened.
You're kidding.
Oh yeah, there's a group of people.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a group of people who haven't accepted that.
I haven't accepted that.
No, they say it was all staged. You
All
know.
staged.
What was it?
Yeah.
The man,
When man walked on the moon in
Walked on the moon?
1969,
Oh, yes.
because Ike said there's a group of people still think that's
there's
a
a
hoax.
conspiracy. There are people that have. Oh yeah, it's quite
I
strong.
suppose
Oh
so.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't doubt it. I never heard that it was, but I
Oh yeah, yeah.
doubt it at
There are
all.
doubters everywhere. If people they have their theories, right? They have
Yes.
conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy.
Also.
Right,
There's always that kind of stuff.
Yes, yes.
But you start linking all these moments in your lifetime. Like a lot of people would never have guessed that man would ever get to the moon. And when it's funny because when people graduate from high school back in the 40s and the 50s here, because we're only talking about here, And they tell you in your yearbook when you graduate, they have always what they're going to do with their lifetime and, you know, all that.
Right.
And nobody ever would have thought in the 1950s, throughout the 50s, that man would ever walk on the moon, or the 40s or the 30s or 20s. It was something that never would ever be realized.
No,
And then you start thinking about these things that have been accomplished since then. What were people thinking then? Like, that would be such a big thing.
yes, yeah.
What else could you possibly think about once that's been done, you know?
That's right.
What would people think today that did graduate, like, and I know people that still live here that graduated from school back in the 30s, and they never would have guessed in a million years that this would have ever happened. So, you know, there's quite a feeling of astonishment,
It
I
is.
guess.
It is.
Yeah.
Right.
It's disbelief.
Yeah. So what do you believe in now?
I don't know. You don't know what might be next, so
Exactly.
you don't
Yeah.
Oh,
know.
that's true.
You
That's
don't
true.
know.
But I know the one thing that always captured my intrigue living here was there was always a good feeling. Whenever I'd go away, when I first came here in the summer of '67, I'd go home every weekend. Because my mom and my brother and my friends all still lived in Squamish. I'd go home, so I would travel to ferries a lot. And after you've been here for a few months, because my job, I would meet, being in radio, I met people
A lot of people.
all the
right.
time. A lot of
Right.
people in a short period of time. And I know a few months after I had started work here and I was going home, I met some young people on the ferry one time, and that was that person's first trip off of the island. And they were about 15, 16, somewhere in that area. That blew me away. But then I found out there were lots of people who, the longer you lived here, the one thing you didn't like was taking the ferries and getting off, because the
Right.
schedule and the hassle, and that was before it cost a lot of money.
Right. Now it's real steep.
So after
Right, yeah.
I was here for a while, the ferries went on strike, so I couldn't go home, so I never went home for a while. And after that, you know, you always had reasons or excuses or whatever, you couldn't go because of this, that. So the trips became less and less. And then you began to realize what these people were saying. The island's a big place. You don't have to leave. And you don't really want to unless you have to. I know Keith McKenzie, who just passed away from Alberni Hardware.
My dad knew him very well.
knew
Keith
him well.
McKenzie.
Yeah, nice guy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a super guy. Real gentleman. And I would talk to him. And he asked me one time, years ago, he says, because he knew I had just come back from the mainland, he says, "What's it like in Horseshoe Bay now?" And I said, "Well, when's the last time you were there?" He said, 1952.
1950.
And I said, and this was like in the late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
I said, "You're going to notice a lot of changes, Keith. That's all I can tell you." And I said, "Oh, by the way, when's the last time you were in Victoria?"
Right.
And I said, "About 1956. So you're going to notice a lot of changes driving into Victoria, too." So, but
Oh,
it
dear.
proved to me that people are content to stay home, and unless you have to.
Unless you have to
Yeah,
go.
so that's a
Right.
different story.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
So
Yeah.
but there's a feeling here that when you come back from I always felt good coming off the ferry and driving up Departure Bay Road. I felt good because I knew I was back on the island. I don't know what it is. And there's always a feeling that when you come back into the valley, it feels good. Even if it's raining or it's foggy, but it really feels good on a beautiful day. But it felt good regardless. Have you ever, you know, and I found a lot of people, when they say that, some people go, "Oh, you're crazy," but a lot of people will say, "You know what, I feel the same way."
Yeah.
There's something here that
Attractive.
it feels good. And I don't know what it is, but, you know, you miss it when you're gone.
You miss it when you're gone, yeah. No.
And when you come back, it feels good. It feels like home, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that's what it is.
Well, that's the way I look at it, because I grew up here in the valley. Mum, has never got as close to the Alberni Valley because you lived in Victoria, you
You
knew
know,
Victoria and you grew up in Calgary.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, it's
you
always-
still have
it's
lots of
always
friends in
been
that
home.
here. You don't get out as much anymore, I
No,
guess, eh?
No,
No.
no.
But people come to visit?
Oh, yes. So many of my friends are gone.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's the curse of
sad
growing
thing.
old.
Yeah.
Muriel McLean would say that quite often.
Yeah.
She said, I gotta go play the piano for the old people.
Yeah.
And that's when she was well into her 90s after
Right,
that.
right.
And everybody always felt that was so funny, but because she never considered
She
herself
didn't
old.
consider herself old.
No,
Yeah, you don't, I guess.
No,
I mean,
but she would say that.
Yes,
Most of your friends are gone.
yes, I know. Well, that happens. Kay Montefray was the last. I knew her well
Yeah.
for years, you know.
And the Burnett.
Well, she's still alive, yes.
Yeah. So you watch the obituaries, right? Like a lot of people do.
That's why
Every-
Dick would never read the obituaries.
Why?
I don't know. He never said why. He just didn't want to.
Really?
Maybe
Didn't want to.
he pressed it maybe or something.
I suppose.
Who knows,
He never said why.
No.
But you know, it may sound morbid, and please don't take it that way.
No.
But I really find a lot, as the older you get, the obituaries are a source of entertainment in the sense as well as information,
Yeah.
because you can be living in the same town and know a lot of people, but you don't see them every day,
Right.
That's right.
and you don't even know they pass away,
No.
or you didn't know they were sick.
That's
didn't know
right.
they were sick.
That's right.
No.
that
And
happens.
you
Yeah.
read the obituaries,
Yeah.
and when I was at the radio station, we never charged for obituaries because the owners of the radio station at the time said, we don't make money off of the dead. That was just their philosophy, which I really agreed with,
Yes, yes.
unless somebody wanted something special done.
Yes, yeah.
But, you know, the thing that I really learned to appreciate is how to read the obituaries. If a person says that they died suddenly, now there's two ways of looking at that. They either get that, I knew you'd want to talk, and I want it now because you've been here for so long. That rivalry, I remember talking to the late Fred Bishop, who I'm sure you knew, great guy. He said, there were two things that brought people together. One was when they won the Canadian Championship in '55, and the other was the tidal wave. Because it proved two things. It wasn't the Alberni athletics, it was the whole damn Valley's athletics when they won that championship. And he said the tidal wave showed that people could work together when they had to. And they had to at that time. So I think this is what, when you save things like the Lady Rose or the water bomber, but the athletic hall is now in danger too.
Yes, I read that.
Now, how long they can afford to keep it going, because people have lost the interest in it that you had to have over the many, many years.
That's right. I know.
So that if it has to be torn down, we have to save part of it as like part of the floor or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So this is where the attitudes have changed over the years, because now we've got all these community service clubs and groups and lodges that are disbanding now because there are no more membership. They can't keep it going,
Oh, right.
which is another curse of the times. But it's something that's, the community volunteerism is dropping. It's still very strong here compared to a lot of other places. But people aren't committing to community involvement like they used to.
No, they're busy at their own lives.
It's more busy with their own lives or their own things.
But when things get tough, and things are going to get economically bad for a while, people I've noticed here tend to pull together. They tend to stay closer to home. They tend to do more in their own
That's right.
community.
That's right. They have to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have to.
And
yeah.
they do.
Yeah,
I
right.
think, that's what I wanted to ask you, but I think maybe that will come again.
Yes, I would be surprised. Might be a good thing, too.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about that when you came here, about the rivalry between the two communities? Because it was been going on for a long time.
Yes, it had. Just when I wasn't actually involved in it. I was a young child, and I guess I'm not an outgoing person.
Mm.
But Dick, I remember, he used to talk about the 1st of July races.
Mm-hmm.
He was always, the young people would race from one town to the other.
Yeah, that's true.
That sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
1st of July was a big thing here, apparently,
Yeah.
in the valley.
And May Day was big
May Day.
for
yes.
many, many years.
Yeah.
Then the Elks were the prime movers and shakers
They
there.
were, yes, they
And then that died off, and 62 was the last year.
was it?
That times were changing, and yeah. But that's all, we have to save that kind of stuff, because that's the heritage of this community,
Yes, of
is
course.
those things.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Those people are gone now, or most of them are gone. So I like to try and get around to save as many of the stories as you can, while the person is still able to tell you the stories and recall things.
Shan gets a magazine that she likes very much,
Oh, Garden West.
Gardens
yeah.
West.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the last one, not this one, the one
Yeah.
before that, there was an article in, and Shan
And
read it first, it's her
a
birthday.
little picture of the original house, and then a bigger picture of what it looks like
What it-
now by the present owner. You go ahead.
But you recognize the house
Yeah.
because you playing with your friends, this whole area, you know, great for kids. The old Mackenzie house,
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
and Shan recognized the old house.
Yeah.
And then we don't know, some relative bought it apparently.
Yeah, younger relative.
Because she
there's
talked
quite a
about,
gardener and has fixed up the house type of thing.
oh, it's wonderful,
Yeah.
on Wilkinson.
Okay.
Right.
And she must be a great granddaughter because she talks about
Her.
shrubs that
Of her
belonged to her
great-grandmother.
great-grandmother.
Okay.
And I knew old Mrs. Mackenzie, I met her anyway.
Um,
Alec Mackenzie was a great friend of Dick's.
Right.
Okay. The other one is Dr. Hilton's house on 3rd Avenue.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You recall that?
I have a couple of shrubs that came from his garden. Mrs.
Right.
Burnett gave me.
Okay.
The flowering plum.
Right, and the
Oh, and the maple.
ornament.
And the maple.
Yeah.
And it was, his daughter gave them to Mrs. Burnett when they built. They built just before we did here. But they did take them. But then they went through a phase where they wanted nothing but the Burnett's. Rhododendrons. They got rid of everything else.
Right.
So she gave me several. So I ended up with a couple of shrubs that had been in Dr. Hilton's garden.
I'm still trying, there's a relative, I think it was their daughter,
Lived up on,
and she was in Ty Watson house, and I was introduced to her one day when I was there,
was she?
and she was going to try and find, she said there were some pictures. I've never seen really good pictures of the house and the gardens before Woodwards came along, bought the property,
No,
and tore everything
I
down.
haven't seen- I haven't either.
And most people say the same thing. They've never really seen the
No,
Nice
It
built.
was,
No.
yeah, it was such a, and they must exist somewhere.
They must. They
Well, you
must.
think
But it's
so?
hard to, if they did, but people didn't take pictures a lot.
No,
No,
that's
not
it.
in
They
those
didn't
days.
have the cameras.
They
Well,
didn't.
it costs a lot of money to develop
yeah.
pictures.
Right, that's
Right.
right.
But we did have quite a few good local photographers over the decades here
Right.
Oh, yes.
that did, thank God, capture a lot of the valley. So
Yes.
somebody's got, and they turned, like you found in your book there, a lot turned into postcards. And
Yes, yeah.
people would
yeah.
send these postcards back to wherever they came from
Of course.
and say, this is what it's like where I live.
That's right.
But none of these things were ever dated.
No,
No.
So
unfortunately.
it's hard to
No.
track it down
That's right.
as to when. But
That's right.
that's one I've always been on a quest for. It's look, Benny's Dine and Dance. Now,
Oh,
up
yes.
on Johnson there,
Yes, I remember
well, it was
that.
on the highway at that time. But,
Crazy.
I'm not doing nothing.
Crazy. That was in my life. That was in my life.
She's trying to grab the treats there,
Oh,
but then she
God.
tried to pretend she wasn't doing anything.
Oh, yeah.
She's investigating.
Yeah, I'm just checking it out.
This was a picture my dad had. Now I don't. It's some it's an aerial view of the valley here somewhere. I suspect maybe it's looking from the lookout, looking towards,
Was
this
that
direction.
one of Albert's pictures?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're
it
right.
was.
I think it's looking from the lookout point direction, looking towards Squirrel Lake and
Beyond.
Beyond, like, you know.
Yeah, because that would be the pulp
That's
mill.
the pulp mill, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I think that was
I,
one of Albert's.
yeah, it's one of Uncle Al, my brother's younger brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing written on it,
No,
unfortunately. No date.
it's just a habit. I always look at the back.
I know, no date.
I know.
And so, as you say, so often people don't write the
Well,
date.
they never did. They intended to, or they, we'll always remember.
Oh, well, yeah, remember it. Yeah. and so-
Dick's two younger brothers were born here in the valley,
What were their names? What were their names?
Ernest and Albert.
Okay.
And Ernest, they both went overseas, of course, in World War, and came back and went to UBC. They had started, I think they'd both gone to Victoria College. It wasn't Victoria.
Are they alive still?
No,
No, they're
neither
all
of them. No, I'm the only survivor of the whole family.
Wow. That makes you feel kind of weird, eh? Yeah, but women always live longer than guys. They always have, and they always do.
Maybe.
Because, you know, and my mother-in-law lived for almost 25 years to the day after her husband died. So.
Yes, yeah.
And she was very independent, like maybe too independent. She admitted later. But he was a dreamer, she was the realist. And they made a good couple that way.
Right.
But women I think, are used to looking after the family and the kids, and they're stronger emotionally. I find
Could
that
be,
women are
could
stronger
be.
emotionally.
I
than
guess
most
nature
men.
builds us in some way.
I think so. I think
What
so.
else?
Yeah, well, it's
What else?
best one I could find. I'll go with that.
Well, anyway, the two younger brothers went overseas with the army.
Oh.
They were in Holland towards the end of the war. And Ernest came back and went to UBC, and he became a surveyor.
Okay.
And Albert was a forester.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of his pictures.
Oh, right, yeah,
Okay.
because he
I think so.
specialized in diseases and trees.
Yeah,
That would
he
make
did.
sense,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
he
right,
did.
yeah.
Did they lived here they came
No,
back?
they didn't
No.
live here when they came
Victoria.
back. They lived, both of them in Victoria. And then Ernest and